sure hope nobody ruins the new Scream for you. Somebody ruined it a little bit for me, but the movie's so chock full of surprises right from the opening. I was like, what are you doing here? What are you doing? That I still was able to have a really good time. In fact, I'm still spinning a little bit from seeing the film. I've thought about it since watching it last night, and I think I've been able to pinpoint some of the reasons that the franchise feels different and yet also refreshed. But it's going to take a while. I'm going to see it again. I was sitting, as some of you have said, very close to the screen when I saw it last night. And the cinematography is so good. The opening shot, the title shot when Scream 6 comes up with like New York City in the background, I was like, that's beautiful, man. That's beautiful. So I think it does have a strong rewatchability factor, at least twice. I think you're going to want to watch it at least twice. So the new Scream movie is very aggressive and genuinely not just terrifying, but also unnerving. As I tweeted last night, I think it's the scariest Scream, and I was genuinely afraid watching it. And I'm also excited to see it again because I was hiding my eyes for a decent part of it. But now I know where all the kills are, so I can watch the whole thing that next time around. As Mindy says, these days in a franchise, there are no rules. And that's very much what it felt like watching Scream 6. And of all the famous boogeymen in Hollywood, I'd have to say Ghostface, to me, is the most terrifying. Maybe because he's also a film trivia nerd. I'm like, wow, I love that stuff. You know, it's awesome. Is there a version of this play a game about our favorite scary movies that doesn't involve murder? Unlike his peers, Ghostface moves fast, so fast, and is shockingly effective. Tens across the board, Ghostface, tens across the board. What form? The action sequences here are shot very, very well and very inventively. I was like, wow, never has a boot looked so cool. And you hear the weight of it. And you're like, oh man, you better run. But once you're on his kill list, once he sees you from behind that mask, 90% of the time, he becomes, you know, as the franchise goes along, the survivor rate goes up a little bit. But basically, Ghostface gets his target. And here, though, for the first time, because New York City is crowded, Ghostface doesn't just go after his target, but will take down anyone else who gets in his way. That bodega sequence was terrifying. And so it adds another even scarier layer to the character and to the films. The voice on the phone, the movie trivia, his manic depressive qualities. The look, again, not just the mask, but those boots. The physicality of the character, the way he moves, it all comes together extremely well. And I'd say for the first time, Ghostface he starts to take on a mythological quality, finally putting him out there with Michael Myers, Jason Voorhees, and Freddy Krueger. I think up until now, Ghostface has been like more of a mask, which of course Michael and Jason are too. Freddy's a glove, basically. But Ghostface, I feel, with this movie leveled up to those characters, which is really cool to see. And I think that's because Neve Campbell, Sidney Prescott, she was holding Ghostface back, which is ironic. But anyway, and almost all the legacy characters are no longer around. Gale Weathers is used sparingly, but quite effective here. So this becomes Ghostface's franchise, and I think is better off for it. Roger L. Jackson is the voice of Ghostface once again, and I think that he and the stuntmen who play the character on screen deserve a heck of a lot of credit. And of course, so do the directors and the cinematographer and the editors for really putting together impressive sequences where you are they're not only on the edge of your seat, but they're thrilling to watch. And a more vicious Ghostface gets a fitting final girl in Samantha Carpenter, who has homicidal tendencies herself, not to mention psychotic visions, those are back, excellent, as the daughter of Skeet Ulrich's Billy Loomis. That gives the series a Dexter/Wednesday sort of vibe, and also borrows, of course, from anime, comic books, and general supernatural stories where our heroine has almost supernatural abilities. In many ways, Samantha Carpenter is Ghostface herself, and the duality there is also very interesting and opens up the franchise story-wise. I liked it. I didn't care for Melissa Barrera in the last movie where her character was introduced, but now with Neve Campbell off the board, Barrera gets to be front and center and gets more character development, and I thought she was much better here. I actually really liked her character. But all this talk about Billy Loomis, man, what about Stu? What about Stu? They even have his robe. What about Stu? Matthew Lillard's still around. All right, so speaking of Wednesday, I've been wondering if I could see Jenna Ortega as anything else but Wednesday after her star turn on the Netflix series. And I'm happy to report that yes, Ortega has a lot of range as an actress, and she did not seem like Wednesday in a Scream movie, yet still was a very fun, engaging character who held her own. So I thought that was great. I was like, oh, that's good for you, Jenna Ortega. She has some big movies coming out. One I know about, I can't even tell you, but it's very similar to, let's just say she's going after Winona Ryder's roles next after taking over Christina Ricci. If the deal goes through, I think it's pretty much done. But until it's announced, you don't know for sure. I'm also thrilled to see Josh Segarra upgraded from comedic relief sidekick to comedic relief beefcake. I still can't believe that Jennifer Walters overlooked this guy. There were romantic sparks in the comic, and I think he was even more appealing on the Disney Plus series. Segarra can definitely pull off the romantic interest role, but I was very happy to see that he maintained his comedic edge. He's a very funny guy. He has great physicality. His role isn't as big as I would have liked it to have been either, but he was great. Speaking of comedy, Jasmine Savoy Brown and Mason Gooding, Cuba Gooding Jr.'s son, they're so different in terms of their vibe. They don't even look that similar to me. Cuba Gooding Jr., of course, captured America's heart for a period of time and has unfortunately run into some issues as of late. But I think Mason Gooding, who I really enjoyed on Love, Victor, is incredibly charismatic as an actor. I would think he would be getting more work, in fact. But he's excellent here. So is Jasmine Savoy Brown, who's also on Yellow Jackets, which is returning soon. And they continue to do a lot of heavy lifting, as they did in the last movie, with great banter and also a lot of heart as twins Mindy and Chad. And Samara Weaving is excellent as the trademark Scream opening act blonde, a role she is perfect for and manages to still stand out as well. By the way, Ethan, that's Spider from Avatar 2. I know, I can't believe it either. How long ago did they shoot Avatar 2? I mean, maybe he's a really good actor, because here he was a bit of an embarrassment as an actor. He hardly made an impression at all. And at least in Avatar 2, he seemed like a professional actor. I think a lot of us are divided, even amongst ourselves, within ourselves as to whether or not he did a good job in Avatar 2. But again, at least he seemed like a professional actor. I can't believe it's the same person. There are actually a lot of characters in this movie, both red shirts and potential suspects, and it's all done very, very well. How about the remaining OGs? Well, as I said, Courtney Cox is used sparingly, but wow, did she get a great sequence with Ghostface. Loved it. That was fantastic. And she did a great job with her part of it. Loved it. But as for Hayden Panettiere back as Kirby, such a big thing that fans were looking forward to in this movie. But let me tell you, dial down those expectations. At my screening, the crowd cheered when she first appeared. People were so excited to see her, but she never got another reaction for the rest of the film. It was really unfortunate. She doesn't look as cool as she did in Scream 4. I'm like, how do you go from that haircut to that one? Come on! And her lines aren't nearly as good, which is very sad. And she seems, unfortunately, to have a similar plastic look to her face as Courtney Cox does, and it's a little bit distracting, I'm afraid. She didn't seem like Kirby. It didn't seem like Kirby returned at all, which was sad, because I know how many people were looking forward to that. So yeah, I didn't miss Sidney Prescott, which I thought was interesting. Although I think Sidney Prescott, I think she hasn't really added a lot to the franchise for the last few movies, to be honest with you. So I wasn't, even when she said she wasn't going to be in the movie, while some Scream fans were disappointed, it didn't really matter to me. But like Stallone with Creed 3, I don't think these actors should be gambling and let the franchise see what it's like without them, because sometimes it seems just fine. I mean, sure, at some point, I'm sure that she and Paramount will agree to a payday that allow her to return, at least for a cameo in some future installment. But again, I think this allows Ghostface to now be the star of the franchise, and I think that's much better. So this was like a happy accident that Neve Campbell never should have allowed to happen, because I'm like, oh, this is great. As for the New York City setting, I actually ended up really liking it. Wow, and found it more terrifying than the usual suburban setting and woods. It's usually the suburbs or the woods of most slasher films. But this, to me, was really great. It was fresh and scary. And maybe it was scarier because of the freshness, but also that even in a huge crowd, you can be all alone and vulnerable. And that's very true of the big city. The press screening was at Regal Union Square down in the Village. And when the movie let out late on a Tuesday night, when it was dark, cold, and windy, it was terrifying walking out of there. There would be intermittent crowds as I walked across town, and like there would be just like things right out of the movie. It was very scary. It was they did a great job. So yes, I think the urban setting gives the whole franchise a bolt of energy, but directors Matt Bettinelli-Olpin and Tyler Gillette still maintain the distinct, crisp, furniture catalog cinematography that Wes Craven established for the franchise back from the very beginning. So it still feels like a Scream movie, which was great. Especially not only because of the visuals, but contrary to the trailers, as many of you said they would, you're like, don't worry, Grace. They do layer in a lot of movie trivia and discussion. And there are a lot of movie fans in cities going to the movies, to multiplexes, talking about movies out and about at bars and restaurants, going to film school. I found it all very relatable and therefore even scarier. Sometimes you're like, I'm not going to be in the suburbs or traipsing around the woods, but you're like, I am walking around the city. I think putting Ghostface, in places that you find yourself more in everyday life is like very scary. I'd have loved them to lean into the film school angle even more, in fact, maybe for Scream 7. That was a great idea. Not film club in high school, but like film school where you really dig into it. That could be really cool. That I think is definitely where I would go with Scream 7. So clearly Ghostface can go anywhere and should. I'm like, what city is next? I really enjoyed Scream 6, and as I said, it still feels like Scream, but at the same time, also like a whole new franchise. It's got a whole new lease on life. Mindy gives a great mini TED Talk, just like her uncle, on current franchises. And I thought it was much better even than her discussion in the last movie. And Scream, indeed, as she lists off franchises that are, also still around, Scream stands out as a rare example of a franchise that's able to keep going and reinvent itself without disappointing fans, at least in my opinion. I liked this installment quite a bit. So that's my non-spoiler review of Scream 6 hitting theaters this Friday exclusively. And I definitely think it's worth going to see. Share your thoughts down below, subscribe today, and of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.